This afternoon about success, about the prema dana, the real treasure, the real wealth, which is love of Krishna, and how Krishna is the source of all enjoying activities. Generally, you consider success to be about what Queen Kunti Devi describes. Janmaishvaya Shrutashivya Edamana Madhapama. Birth in a influential aristocratic family. Wealth, money, Aishvarya. Shruta, learning, education. And Shri, personal beauty. However, in bhakti, we consider the greatest wealth to be love of Krishna. And we should always remember that as we strive to make our way through this world. Yes, live as comfortably as you can in this world, but bear in mind always what is your real purpose, how to develop love for Krishna. Shamkun Prabhu was speaking to us about, I was at lunch. I was speaking with Shamkun Prabhu and Nilamani Prabhu. And we were all sharing our childhood backgrounds, growing up in our formative years. One was formative years in the UK, in London. Another was in the region of Goa in India. Mine was Manhattan in New York City and school in New England. So naturally, before coming upon Prabhupada's mercy, we had very limited conceptions of success. My mother had 3 principles for success that she instilled in all her children. She said, you have to be a scholar, you have to be an entrepreneur, and you have to be a Christian. There was another one, number 4, which she also told us, but she didn't speak it publicly. Besides being a scholar, an entrepreneur, and a Christian, she said, always associate with Jewish people, but believe in Jesus. She did not know what the prema dana is, the real treasure. And fortunately, when I came upon Srila Prabhupada's books, I realized from the first 2 pages of reading, this is the real education I've been longing for. So what do those books tell us? In Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, you're presented with the greatest bhakta, who is actually Krishna himself, Radha Krishna combined. That means Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We were speaking yesterday in Plainfield about how Lord Chaitanya attempted to go to Vrindavan, which is ironic, because Lord Chaitanya's mind is always Vrindavan itself. In his mind, the pastimes of Vrindavan are constantly going on. Yet he tried to go to Vrindavan. And as you may know from your reading of Chaitanya Charitamrita, he came back. He went as far as Ramkeli, met Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, and then came back to Jagannath Puri. Upon his return to Jagannath Puri, he told all the devotees, I tried to go to Vrindavan, but I couldn't because Gadadhar Pandit objected. And Gadadhar Pandit responded, please don't talk like that. You're just going to Vrindavan to set the example for others. But you, in your mind, are always in Vrindavan. So Lord Chaitanya stayed in Puri for a few months. Again and again, devotees would come up with reasons why he shouldn't leave just now for Vrindavan. There's this festival, Dol Yatra, there's that festival, that festival, that festival, that festival. Finally, Mahaprabhu asked, please, 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 give me your blessings so I can go to Vrindavan Dham. Let's catch up with Lord Chaitanya in Prayag. From Kashi, Varanasi, he's gone to Prayag, the confluence of the Ganga and Yamuna, where the Vaini Madhava deity is. Mahaprabhu danced in front of the Vaini Madhava deity. And as soon as he saw the Yamuna River, what did he do? He jumped in, unconscious with ecstasy. So his servant, Balabhadra Bhattacharya, had to pull him out. In Prayag, Lord Chaitanya delivered thousands of persons just by chanting and dancing. And then it's time to move on. He's moving on to Mathura. So we need some basis of comparison. Naturally, always when Mahaprabhu is in Jagannath Puri, he's in ecstasy. But just think what it's like on the road to Mathura. His ecstasy, Kaviraj Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita says, his ecstasy increased tenfold. What about when he actually arrives in Mathura? His ecstasy increases 100-fold. And then he goes to Vrindavan. At last he achieves Vrindavan. And his ecstasy increases tens of thousands of fold. Usually just the idea, just the name of Vrindavan would be enough to put Lord Chaitanya in ecstasy when he's residing in Jagannath Puri. But now he's actually in Vrindavan. You cannot calculate the levels of transcendental ecstasy. Of course, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always perfect and complete. But you see, it's the nature of the spiritual reality that it's dynamic. It's always increasing. By it's always increasing, that doesn't mean that the spiritual reality is lacking in any way. It's simply the nature of the spiritual energy, that it's always expanding, increasing. So in that way, we can understand how Lord Chaitanya's ecstatic love of Krishna is always on the move, so to speak. It's always doubling, tripling, quadrupling, increasing by 1,000 millionfold. This is inconceivable to us. But then just think, how is it that during Rasa Leela, 1 billion gopis, an uncountable number, are there with Krishna on the bank of the Yamuna? With your mundane intelligence, you'll start thinking, how can 1 billion gopis fit on the riverbank of the Yamuna? But the nature of the Dham is that it's always expanding. You cannot contain Krishna's pastimes with your limited intellect. Let's see. According to time and space, the way that the bank of the Yamuna is, how can 1 billion gopis fit there? But Vrindavan Dham is always expanding. In fact, as Krishna demonstrated to Lord Brahma, in some corner of Vrindavan, all the billions of universes of the material world are there. Sometimes devotees ask, in the Shastra it is said that Krishna went from this part of the Brajamandal to that part. all in one day. How do you cover all that distance in one day and still get back in time for dinner by Mother Yashoda? But you see, the Dham is expanding. It's Krishna's space. You can't put the laws of material nature as you know it upon Krishna. He's the master of time and space. So he can do what is impossible, it seems, to go from one far off corner of the Dham to another far off corner and do it as a little cowherd boy all in one day and get back home in time in the evening to be bathed and fed by Mother Yasoda. Another example of Krishna's unlimitedness beyond our conceptions of time and space is when he and the cowherd boys go to the forest for a picnic. This might seem very insignificant to you. And you'll wonder, why is the Supreme Personality of Godhead having a picnic? Similarly, you can ask, why isn't the Supreme Personality of Godhead having a dance? People have very narrow, limited, and mundane conceptions of what is God. One survey was done by Baylor University. It's a Christian school, but their research is respected. They wanted to understand what kind of image of God do people have in their mind, the average American. So they found 4 different types of God conceptions. The first conception is God is a very severe punisher. He's authoritarian. He's always watching when to smash the sinners. And so you have to be very afraid. This conception of God, the scholars say, is mostly held by evangelical Christian men. And then there's conception number 2. God always forgives. He's very kind. He's a companion. You can make mistake after mistake, sin after sin, but he's still there to forgive you. So the pollsters found out that that conception is in the majority held by evangelical women. And then number 3 is the distant God. He set the creation into motion and then goes away until it's Judgment Day. And when Judgment Day comes after you die, that's when God appears and gives you your just rewards or punishments. Otherwise, he's distant. He doesn't show up until the very end. And then conception number 4 is that God is some kind of vague concept. God is light. God is love. God is peace. In other words, God is like some kind of putty that takes whatever shape and form you like, whatever concept you like, according to your metaphysical speculation. Srimad Bhagavatam presents to you a God who dances and a God who picnics. What can you say about that? So, just like the first verse of chapter 29 of the 10th canto, the 5 chapters of Rasa Lila begin with Krishna deliberating. Bhagavan apite ratri sharadot pulamalika. He's Bhagavan, but still, he looks at the night and thinks. What happens actually is, after dinner, after being bathed, and Krishna's supposed to go to sleep, he goes up to the top of the house where there's a watch tower-like facility. This is where Mother Yashoda would go to watch for Krishna and the cowherd boys and calves returning from the forest. Then first she sees the dust, signifying that Krishna and the herd are coming. This same place, that's where Krishna goes as night falls, and he begins to evaluate the situation. Sharadotpala Malika. It's an autumn night. The jasmine flowers are blooming, although out of season. The breezes are blowing with fragrances from the flowers. Viksharantum manas chakre. Krishna looks at the night and feels the breeze, sees the sky, the full moon, Rasa Purnima, and then he comes to the conclusion, tonight is the night for the Rasa dance. And then Yogamaya Mapasrita. Yogamaya, his internal potency makes all the arrangements. So, in Gopalila, the cowherd boys and the cows, Krishna also is thinking. He decides the day before, I want to have a picnic in the forest. Now you could say, well, first of all, how can God dance? You may have trouble with the Rasa Leela. But then you hear that the Supreme Personality of Godhead wants to enjoy a picnic in the forest. But you have to turn your suppositions on their head and think, the only reason why we like to dance, the only reason why we like picnics, just like surrounding the temple here, nice grounds to sit down and take prasad. We like that because we're part of Krishna. So unless the enjoying capacity for these activities is in Krishna, how can it be in you? Human beings crave for a happy romance. Whether your marriage is arranged or not, still you're hoping for romance. That's because you're part of Krishna, who is a supreme romanticist. And now we're about to hear how Krishna is the supreme picnicker. What does Bhagavatam say? Echoing Vedanta Sutra, Janmadi Yasyataha. The absolute truth is that from which everything emanates. Everything means what? Everything. Rasa dancing, picnics, everything. So in this way, you get the full understanding of Bhagavan. We generally understand Bhagavan to mean the possessor of 6 opulences, unlimitedly. Wealth, strength, fame, knowledge, renunciation, beauty. Krishna is unlimitedly deep in all 6. So as Prabhupada writes in the beginning of the Krishna book, you may have met someone who has a little wealth, a little beauty, a little knowledge, but you've never met anyone in the history of humanity who is infinitely deep in each one of those. Wealth, strength, fame, knowledge, renunciation, and beauty. Never met anyone except for Krishna. But in Chaitanya Charitamrita, you can go even deeper into Krishna's position. Often when you meet someone, you want to know, in a nice, discreet way, what is your position? I know my family is very position conscious. When I took up bhakti in 1972, 73, family was very concerned. What about your position? But I was thinking, I am 21 now, soon I'll be 65. These positions, they come and go. Of course, If you have a position that you can use for Krishna's service, very good. But we should always keep in mind, my success, my position is all meant to be engaged in Krishna's service. If we want to understand positioning, then we need to focus on Krishna. And we see no one has a position anywhere near like what Krishna has. You can't equal Krishna's position. You can't surpass Krishna's position. So we talked about the 6 opulences of the possessions of Bhagavan. But Kaviraj Goswami adds on to that, or expands the definition. He gives us the term Swaraja Lakshmi. That means Krishna is completely independent in fulfilling his desires. And Krishna has infinite desires combined with the infinite ability to satisfy every one of his infinite desires. What do you think about that? How can you compare to that position? If I ask you, how many desires do you have? How many can you count? Anyone? How many? No, actually not unlimited. Let's start off with, well, I want good money, lots of money. Number 2, I want a nice family life. Okay. Number 3, good health. Number 4, big house that I don't have to clean. Number 5, successful children. You're up to 5 and you're already running out of. Okay, then you have to think bigger. Okay, I want the environment to become clean all over the planet. Number 7, world peace. You're running out now of desires. You haven't even got to 10 yet. So how can you compete with Krishna, who has unlimited desires? You can't even understand that. Just like we can't understand how 1 billion gopis can fit on the bank of the Yamuna. And now we're going to hear about Krishna's unlimited cowherd boys with their vast numbers of cows. And how does all that happen? How can Krishna be completely independent in fulfilling every one of his unlimited desires? Unlimitedly. How can that happen? Then you start to understand what is Bhagavan and how Krishna is unlimitedly attractive. So Krishna had made up his mind the day before. Tomorrow is picnic time. So all the cowherd boys, they knew that before they went to sleep at night. So Krishna rises in the morning without his mother waking him. He washes his face. How is it the Supreme Personality of Godhead has to wash his face? Is there dirt on it? But this is all pastime. Krishna is imitating in his Naralila, his human life pastimes. He's imitating a human being. In that way, the sweetness of the relationship with his devotees is preserved. So Krishna takes off his night clothes. He's washed his face. He dresses very attractively. Mother Yashoda hasn't awakened him. And usually, Krishna and his cowherd boyfriends will take lunch. They'll take lunch with them. Or they'll have lunch somehow or other at home. But this time, Krishna has put the word out. We're taking lunch with us into the forest. So how does he assemble all the cowherd boys? He goes to the front of his house and he blows his horn, his cowherd boy's horn, bugle. It's such a sweet sound. All the cowherd boys, unlimited numbers, wake up and come out of their houses ready to join Krishna. And each of those unlimited cowherd boys has a herd of thousands of calves. So you're wondering, how does all this fit into Vrindavan? Unlimited cowherd boys with herds, each one having a herd of hundreds of thousands of calves. And then Krishna calls his own herd. And if you thought you couldn't count the cowherd boys' herd, you definitely can't count the numbers in Krishna's herd. And that's just the calves. This is all going out to the forest in Vrindavan for a picnic. The cowherd boys, Krishna, Balaram wasn't there. Why? It was his birthday and his mother was holding him back. Rohini was holding him back. So Krishna's going to the forest without Balaram. So all these calves, because Gopashtami hasn't happened yet. This is still before Krishna's given responsibility for the cows. Now he's just dealing with calves. So all these unlimited calves and unlimited cowherd boys led by Krishna going to the forest. Now, just consider, this is just unlimited calves. What about the cows, the bulls, the older calves who are no longer going to the forest, the younger calves who are still with their mother? You're not counting them. You're just counting the unlimited calves that went with Krishna. This is all going on in Vrindavan. How do you calculate this? The cowherd boys are so happy to be with Krishna. They're playing games in the forest. Sometimes Krishna, accompanied by a few select cowherd boys, will go ahead in the forest to see some distant spot. And then the other cowherd boys would compete. Who can run and touch Krishna first? So they'll do that. They'll compete. They'll run. I touch Krishna first. No, I touch Krishna first. And so then Krishna has to settle the dispute. You all are with me now. Everyone's the winner. And then there's the lunch stealing pastime. That propensity is also there in the Supreme. Therefore, it's in his parts and parcels. The cowherd boys would steal someone's lunch, one of the other cowherd boys. And then that cowherd boy would try to get it back. And the cowherd boys with the lunch would throw it to another cowherd boy further away. And this would go on and on until the original cowherd boy whose lunch was stolen started to cry. And the other cowherd boys would laugh. And then they would give him his lunch back. Or sometimes they would steal the lunch of a cowherd boy. And the cowherd boy would protest. And then they would take the lunch. The robbers would take the lunch and put it at the base of a tree that was surrounded by thorns and red ants. Okay, you can go get your lunch back. So in this way, they're enjoying life with Krishna. So where does our enjoying propensity come from? It has to originate within Krishna. But the major lesson we have to learn in our training stage of bhakti, sadhana bhakti, is that we cannot be the direct enjoyers. This goes against everything that a consumer society is instilling in us. Growing up in a consumer society, whether you grew up in New York, London, Mumbai, Delhi, wherever, Gujarat, wherever, you're instilled with the motivation to succeed by being the direct enjoyer. Even when you give charity, you're philanthropic, you're still doing it to directly enjoy. I will give this much, and then I will be happy and I will enjoy my fame of being a charitable person. Of course, when you give in charity to Krishna, that is different. Even you may have the material motivation. I'll give to Krishna and then I'll become famous. But the situation doesn't end there. By continuing to engage in devotional service, you become purified of your desires for fame. And you just want to please Krishna. So that's why Bhagavatam says, Akamo, Sarvakamava, Mokshakama, Udhadadi. Whether you are free of material desires, full of material desires, hankering for liberation, please engage in Krishna's service. This is being truly non-sectarian. In fact, in one purport in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada writes that this Krishna consciousness movement is for all types of persons, the attached, the unattached, the free from material desires, the full of material desires. Everyone is welcome, and by the association with devotees, everyone becomes purified. So these cowherd boys are at the pinnacle of success. They're playing with Krishna. They're having such a good time in the forest, imitating monkeys by jumping up in the trees and making faces at the monkeys, sitting on the bank of the rivers next to frogs. And when the frogs jump into the water, the cowherd boys jump also in the water, imitating frogs, making movements like peacocks. What's wrong with this peacock? This peacock doesn't know how to dance. Let's show the peacock how to dance. Krishna would also do that. Imitation peacock dancing. Then they would do swan-like movements. Having such a good time in the forest. Decorating themselves with forest flowers and minerals, even though their mothers had decorated them so nicely with gold and pearl ornaments. Still, when the cowherd boys get to the forest, they like to put on all kinds of natural decorations from the forest vegetation. So Shukadeva Goswami comments about this. Itam satam brahma sukhanubhrja. Look at this. Who can understand it? Can the Brahmavadis understand this? What about Dasham Gatanam Paradaivatena? Can those who worship Krishna in Dasya Prem, the Dasya Bhaktas, can they understand that their worshipable Lord, Supreme Lord of all lords, is playing in the forests with cowherd boys, imitating monkeys, finding wells and yelling down into wells, and the echo comes back and then cursing the echo? Is this the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Can someone worshiping the Lord in awe and reverence, not even talking about the Brahmavadis, who have some partial realization, partial God realization by worshiping, by merging into Brahman or attempting to merge into Brahman. They can never dream of participating in Krishna's cowherd boy Leela. And even the Dasya Bhaktas, those in servitude, they're dominated by awe and reverence. So they can't just intimately play with Krishna. And then Mayashratanam, Nana Darakena, those people who think Krishna is an ordinary human being. They certainly are never qualified to participate in Krishna Leela, in the cowherd boy Leela. So Shukadeva Goswami explains, he exclaims, how many pious activities did these cowherd boys perform to do what the Brahmavadis can't do, to do what the Dasya Bhaktas can't do? What to speak of what those who think Krishna is an ordinary person, they're useless. But how many pious activities did these cowherd boys accumulate? to have the opportunity to play with Krishna like this. But then again, as the acharyas point out, no amount of punya, no amount of pious activity will give you the spot in Krishna Lila with the gopas and gopis. But this is a way of saying you can't count, you can't figure out what all these cowherd boys have done previously to get the position they have now. So when you say how many pious activities, it's like saying priceless, uncountable. Because in a normal human society, like what we don't have today, in a normal human society, pious activities, punya is the currency. Just like the dollar is the world's currency still. Similarly, in a civilized society, punya, good karma, is the universal currency. So that's why Shukadeva Goswami is saying, Krita punya punja. How many pious activities did they do? Even though he knows good and well, no punya can ever bring about association with Krishna. So then what happens? Amidst all this playing, the cowherd boys come upon Aghasura. Aghasura's got a problem. He's got issues with Krishna, and he's got issues with the cowherd boys. Why does he have issues with Krishna? Who knows? Huh? Killed his sister and brother. Baki Baka. Aghasura is Baki Bakanuja. He's the younger brother of both Baki, Putana, and Baka. Both his sister and brother have been killed by Krishna. So he wants to avenge that. He's one of Kamsa's wizards who can take any form he likes. So he took the form of a huge python, 8 miles long. Bottom of the mouth, as you know, resting on the ground, top of the mouth, way up in the clouds. But it wasn't simply that he wanted to avenge the killing of his sister and brother. What else? Looking at the cowherd boy's pleasure, he was totally disgusted. The more the cowherd boys became happy playing with Krishna, the more Aghasura suffered. You have to put yourself in demoniac consciousness to understand this. Oh, look at them. They're having so much fun. I'm going to kill them. I can't stand it. It's hard for a devotee to visualize that much envy. I don't know if you've ever been envious of someone in your life. How did that person get that position? What? He must have bribed someone. I was hearing of Madan Gopal Prabhu. He went from one job in IT and now he's a director at Citibank. He must have paid someone else. There's envy. So Aghasura, he had such a problem with the enjoyment he was seeing. He couldn't stand it. As I said, the more the cowherd boys were enjoying with Krishna, the more Aghasura suffered watching it. So what did the cowherd boys think upon coming upon Aghasura? They debated amongst themselves. Is this a real python? No. Many of them said, can't be. No python can be this big. Others of the cowherd boys, they thought, this looks like a dangerous snake. And they were starting to run away. But then the cowherd boys who thought Aghasura is just a toy, they said, you fools, what are you running away for? This is an amusement spot in Vrindavan. They were thinking that Aghasura was made of clay and had been created by the Lord of creation, not Krishna. Krishna is not the Lord of creation. The Lord of creation has made this imitation snake for us to play with, running in and out of the snake here in Vrindavan. So back and forth the discussion went. Is this really a snake? No, it can't be. Finally, they concluded, what? It's a real python. But then, doesn't matter because Krishna is here. And what are we going to do now? We're going to march into the python's mouth and enjoy Krishna saving us. They're really in the Gopa Leela, the little cowherd boy Leela. What does it matter that it's a dangerous snake? We've concluded it is a dangerous snake. But we're here with Krishna. Krishna's saved us from so many situations. He'll do it again. Let's have fun. Let's march into this python's mouth and bring our calves with us. So they did just that. They're clapping their hands, showing we're fearless, we're bold, we're brave. And the calves were accompanying them. They all were running into the mouth of Aghasura. Simultaneously, Krishna is thinking, I got to stop them. So then you begin to wonder, Krishna failed. He couldn't stop them from going into Aghasura's mouth. What to do? Why couldn't Krishna successfully stop them? He's the Supreme Personality Godhead. What happened? Although Krishna desired to stop them, the cowherd boys desired to go in and be saved by Krishna. This shows, the acharyas say, that the desire of the devotee is most important to Krishna. They desired to go in. Krishna submitted to their desire because they're his pure devotees. So Krishna is now apparently puzzled what to do. The cowherd boys and calves marched into the mouth of Aghasura. I know this is a dangerous demon. What to do? How do I save the cowherd boys and calves and kill the demon? They're inside the demon. How do I kill the demon in such a way that the cowherd boys and calves are saved? So it seems like Krishna has a riddle, yes? What kind of God is this who's puzzled? You're all praying to Krishna, Jai Shri Krishna, please do this, please do that. But here Krishna seems to be stymied. He's in a situation in which he can't apparently stop disaster from unfolding. But this is Krishna enjoying. How many of you play with Rubik's Cube? Anyone? Yes, we have a few. How many do crossword puzzles? Raise your hand. Even more. And there are other games I'm sure you play. Mental games. You do that for enjoyment. So where does that propensity come from? It comes from Krishna. He enjoys being momentarily puzzled. Oh, how am I going to solve this? I have no idea. It's fun. Can you see that? Of course, then Krishna makes his plan. He goes into the mouth of Aghasura because Aghasura is waiting. Why is Aghasura waiting? Jai Shri Shri Gaura Jai. Why is Aghasura waiting? Because he's waiting for Krishna to enter. He's already got the cowherd boys and calves in his mouth. So he's thinking, everyone has entered my mouth except Krishna. Krishna killed my brother and sister. So he's waiting, he's waiting, he's waiting. Meanwhile, the demigods are watching. They're panicking. Even though they know logically no one can defeat Krishna, still the situation, just the impact, the emotional impact of the situation has scrambled their intelligence. Oh no, what's going to happen to Krishna? Krishna's going inside Aghasura. Oh no. And the demons are rejoicing. Kamsa had spies in Vrindavan, and they had already relayed to Kamsa, Krishna's going into the mouth. He's finished. So they're all rejoicing. So Krishna, as he's going in the mouth, he knows this. The demigods are paranoid. The demons are rejoicing. So Krishna has decided, I'll do something about this. This is a key moment in the whole pastime. So finally, what does Krishna do? In the throat of Aghasura, Krishna expands his body so that he's plugging up the throat of Aghasura. Aghasura now also is expanding. They're having a competition. Krishna's expanding inside the throat. Aghasura is fighting back by expanding, but he can't keep up with Krishna's expansion. And as you know, Aghasura's eyes pop out, and the acharyas point out that Aghasura he's totally disorientated. Where am I? Where am I going? What's happening? And his eyes are popping out, and he can't breathe. In that way, Krishna finished him. So a subject for another talk is what happened to Aghasura after death. But for now, we'll end by saying Krishna and the cowherd boys and calves march out of the mouth of the dead Aghasura and set off a whole cosmic celebration. In the upper planetary systems also. And even Brahma himself is wondering, what's all the partying about? And next comes the Brahma Vimohana Leela, where Lord Brahma himself has to investigate this cowherd boy scene and how they take lunch. He's wondering, is this really my worshipful Lord Krishna? But next time. All right. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. All right. Questions? Yes, Prabhu.
So especially the way you told the story, it's so attractive. Krishna's narrow leela, at the downplaying his opulence as starting. But in our level of devotional service, for example, we're taught to worship the deeds of the moon or in reference. So my question is there a danger when we hear these forget about opulence. I like the attractive leela. Are we in danger of taking things too cheaply, or is there a danger in how we prevent, going too fast beyond our actual ability to understand?
When you read Krishna book, which Prabhupada said was his favorite book, you see that the Leela is embedded in Tattva. Therefore, we were explaining about Suraja Lakshmi and Bhagavan. Now, here's an interesting point that you reminded me to say. Generally, in Krishna's pastimes, his childhood pastimes in Braj, he doesn't expand his body. But he did that within Aghasura. Why? Because Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj weren't around. For their pure Vatsalya Prem, their pure parental love, to be disturbed by seeing Krishna change his body from a child into something bigger. But when Krishna killed Trinavarta and Putana, he didn't expand his body. But now in the forest, Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj aren't around. So he could let loose his Aishwarya powers without threatening their relationship. Think about that. Cowherd boys were unconscious. They were in a death-like condition, waiting to enjoy Krishna bringing them back to consciousness. Yes. You have to speak louder, please. Yeah. Shamakun, can you hear? It was hard for me to hear.
Yes, his question, Maharaj, is somebody is in the Shantaras or Dasiras. Can he go to the Sakyaras? And is it by sadhana or any other means?
Is it by
Sadhana?
association? Even you can go from Brahman realization to the rasas with Krishna by association. Isn't that Shukadeva Goswami's testimony? Parinishta pi Nayagunya Uttama Sloka Lilaya. He describes in the second canto, I was perfectly, certainly absorbed in Brahman consciousness. But then I heard from my father Vyasadeva, I heard the Krishna Leelas, and I decided to go to the higher level of Bhagavan realization. The four Kumaras were impersonalist bhaktas, but they smelled the lotus feet of Krishna, particularly the saffron particles and the tulsi leaves. And just by that, they became Krishna bhaktas. So by contact with Krishna and his devotees, just like Lord Chaitanya in Kashi, Varanasi, you could say he had difficulty. He himself said, I came here with such a fabulous load of prema dana, ecstatic love of Krishna, but no one wants it. What am I going to do? If I go to another city, I'll be carrying such a heavy load. He's speaking metaphorically, because prema dana has no material weight, and he's the Supreme Personality, got it. But he's saying, my mission here in Kashi hasn't taken off. What can I do? I can't take all this burden of ecstatic love to another city. It's too heavy to carry. Therefore, if someone will just offer a fraction of the price that it's worth, I'll give it all away. So he did. After leaving Kashi the first time, he came back the second time and delivered Prakashananda Saraswati and thousands of Prakashanandas, Mayavadi sannyasis. By his association, by Mahaprabhu's association, there was a change in consciousness. So sometimes Prabhupada would say that more fortunate than the impersonalists were his Western devotees, his Western disciples. Even though they came from no Vedic background, they were not offenders, saying the ultimate is Brahman, or there are many gods, they're all the same, Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu, Durga. They were blank slates, and Prabhupada could just give them straight Bhagavad Gita as it is. When I read Bhagavad Gita, I didn't know anything about Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu, Durga, but I did recognize in all my years of intense academic scholarship study in the most competitive boarding schools and then at Yale University, when I read Bhagavad Gita as it is, I said, I have never seen an intellect like this, and I have seen the best intellects in the world. I've had them as my associates, as my teachers. I have never seen anyone match what is in these purports. Anything else? Yeah.
You mentioned Christianity.
I mentioned Christianity in the beginning.
So I was wondering, what are the biggest obstacles philosophically that Christians face when they come into Krishna?
What are the biggest obstacles that Christians face when they come to Krishna consciousness? Well, when I was 13 years old, I was giving sermons in the Presbyterian church. When I was 5 years old, I was standing up before the whole congregation and reciting Bible verses. There's actually no obstacle for someone who's a real Christian. Just like for someone who's a real Vaishnava, there's no obstacle to be Krishna conscious. For someone who's a real Vaishnava. There are different levels of understanding the Supreme, and that's why I mentioned different conceptions of God. They all have elements of truth. But unless you can account for the enjoying propensity, where does it come from? The desire to dance, the desire to have romance, the desires to picnic. Unless you can see that in the ultimate source, your spiritual practice is not as complete as it could be. So we respect all religions, while at the same time we understand what is the full development of religion. And we try to demonstrate that by our behavior. That's most important. All right? Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.